Hello, hello. The gang's all here, along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers, and it is game week. We finally got game week. It is here. We are counting down. It is 5 days away. The season opener. Can almost touch it, Vince. Can almost touch it.
I know. I it felt so far away, and yet here we are, game week. It's one of those things that doesn't quite feel true. You know what I mean? Like I'm not. I feel like somebody's messing with me. It's not really game week. We still have a couple months to go.
I know. It's like this. This makes that starting training camp a week earlier all worth it. You know, just the fact that we. I mean, really, it's the premier game of the week as well. Notre Dame Navy.
Because if you look at the slate of games,
exactly.
It's the only thing, man. Like this is the only game on the docket, and all respect to the other teams that are playing and the players and all of that, but this is the only game that's really going on, and I'm pretty fired up for it.
I do wish Tennessee State was playing this week, just so we kind of, have something to try to have something to look at. You know what I mean? Like, to base next week on, but. We'll get to that, I guess, when we get there.
Tennessee State.
Tennessee State. No, but you know it is. It's
I know, but we said that about Stanford last year, so
we'll get to that in a little bit. I did want to kind of a few notes as we get into, since this is the first full week of shows and all that stuff leading up to game day on Saturday. We are tweaking some things where there's shows here on Ivy Nation Sports Talk. And this will kind of be what things are going to look like throughout the season. So Mondays, today, you're going to hear some Marcus Freeman press conference comments. That'll kind of be, we'll talk a little bit about the game, next week, obviously. With some Marcus Freeman comments in there. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we've got the Navy beat writer. Took a bit of doing to get Bill tracked down, but I got him tracked down, recorded it this morning. By the way, apologies to anyone who may have logged in at 11 a.m. expecting to see a live interview. I accidentally set the recording to live and not record. And I get in there and there's all these people in the chat and I'm like, and it's like, 2 minutes till. So I had to delete that and send him a new link and all that.
That's funny.
Kind of stuff. But
that's funny.
So we've got the Navy guy tomorrow. Rapid fire will follow after that. Wednesday is probably going to be the biggest change. We're going to be doing, I don't know how major this change is going to be, but it's typically been Mailbag Wednesday. We're still going to have a mailbag on Wednesdays, but what we're going to do is we're going to start the Wednesday shows with more of a preview of the opponent, talk about some of their personnel and stuff like that. And then it'll kind of be like how Brian does his mailbag. You'll talk about whatever the main topic is first, and then we'll get mailbag questions in after that. And that's going to the mailbag's going to take the place of rapid fire on Wednesdays. So we'll see how that goes. No rapid fire on Wednesdays.
I like it. Yeah. And normally I'll be Mondays and Wednesdays. Jesse will be Tuesday, Thursdays, but there'll be some jockeying of time slots for, various reasons and things of that nature. I don't know, like soccer games and, stuff. So
Thursdays we'll have more Marcus Freeman audio from he does a Zoom at noon on Thursdays, so we will have that. And I don't know exactly what this Thursday is going to look like. I need to look, and I'm not sure when he's going to be doing that. It seems like it might be a little later in the day. This week I'll have to find out. But then Jesse's going to break out the whiteboard. He'll do some X's and O's, game specific, to that week's game. We'll have some rapid fire as well. Fridays and Saturdays, maybe this is actually the bigger change. Brian's still going to have his mailbag show. We're not going to have a live show on Fridays. We're going to record Countdown to Kickoff on Fridays. We're not going to do it live Saturday mornings anymore. So we're going to record Countdown to Kickoff, the pregame show, on Friday. We will post the YouTube Friday night for people who want to get a jump on it. And then the podcast will drop early Saturday morning. So we're going to give people more of a chance to listen to that pregame show by not doing it live Saturday morning and recording it earlier so we can get it out to you earlier.
And it gives us our Saturday mornings back, which I'm not overly upset about. Just saying. True. Saying. Because there's, Saturdays are long days. And as much as I love my job, I love it. It's a long day on Saturday. And so kind of taking out that front end a little bit is not going to be terrible.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be complaining about that, are we?
No. No, actually, I've already picked up some work at school Saturday morning. So there you go.
I'm sure. Okay, so we're going to have some comments here from Marcus Freeman. I understand the press conference, there were some issues with the audio, and I noticed there were issues last week with the audio as well, because I have my recorder and I record it there, and it's a little ambient when you do it that way. But ambient was a lot better than what I heard when I tried to, I thought was going to get cleaner audio last week, and it sounded like it didn't get any better today.
It was bad. I actually watched it live. So I don't always get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. But I did. I was sitting at my desk, and it was literally high noon, and I was like, there's something going on. Monday's at Marcus Freeman's press conference. So I go ahead and turn it on, and the audio was horrible.
Yeah.
It sounded like he was a robot for a little bit of it, and then it would cut out completely, and it was rough. Now I was able to gather 90% of what was being said, but there was definitely some silence.
Well, we'll have better audio then with some of these cuts that we're going to play here in a minute. They did, of course, release the first depth chart of the season. We officially got to see the depth chart. Anything really stand out to you? There weren't any major surprises. Maybe the closest thing to a surprise. I'll throw it to you first. Any surprises that you saw?
Not with the starters. I mean, there were no surprises with the starters. I think maybe there were a couple of, I don't even know if you would call them surprises with the two deep. You know what I mean? A lot of youth obviously sprinkled throughout the two deep, which was not a surprise because we've seen them do their thing. But if you've been locked in a cave for the last 9 months and you're just springing into Notre Dame football, you're like, wow, that's a lot of youth in the two deep. Okay, yeah, I mean that was a little bit surprising, I guess, when you actually see it on paper. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be some spots like at linebacker and things like that where they may not get to the twos. You know what I mean? It may be a kind of a different rotation, which I could definitely see. It's not going to be a straight up Bowen going in right away for somebody, that kind of a thing. I don't see that being the case.
Uh-huh.
I think there'll be a little bit more positional flexibility with some of the starters, kind of a thing, but a lot of youth in there, man. A lot of youth in there. And there was a piece of me that was still, and again, I hope Pat Coogan's family isn't watching, but there was a little piece of me that was hoping that it would say Billy Schrouth on the first line and Pat Coogan on the second line. But
I mean, I think that's probably, at least we've at the very least we knew it was coming, I guess, based on what we've seen the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
We knew it was coming, and it is official today. Pat Coogan is going to start at left guard.
Yep.
And Rocco Spindler is going to start at right guard.
Yep.
And Marcus Freeman was asked about what those two guys have shown throughout fall training camp.
Our guard battle was really, really good. The competition amongst those guys was what you want to see. I think Rocco and Pat both just, the confidence they build in their coaching staff, the trust of them being able to do their job on a consistent basis was why they'll be in there to start the game. And so I feel really good about the depth of our guard position. Billy had a great spring. A great fall camp. So, but those two guys, man, have had a really good fall camp in terms of just the execution of all of them are physical. All of them have the traits that you look for in offensive guards, but the overall execution of what they were asked to do on a consistent basis is why those guys will be starting for us. Thanks.
Consistency sounds like it won the day, and I think that's kind of, especially with Coogan, is the thing. If you're comparing Coogan to Billy Schrouth, and there are some people who I think are kind of having a hard time coming to grips with this whole thing, to be quite honest. I guess, you being one of them. Do you think, and I did see this on the boards today, kind of thinking out loud, do you think that the matchup with Navy has anything to do with it? In other words, you put the more consistent guy out there because of this Navy front that you're going to see, and maybe over the course of the next few weeks, Billy Schrauth ends up overtaking him. What do you think about that theory?
I mean, I would subscribe to that theory if we saw more Billy Schrauth with the ones when we had an opportunity to see the ones. We haven't seen him with the ones in
a long time.
Weeks. And if you were going to hand the job over to him after Navy, right, I would have expected to see him with the ones at some point or another. And we never did. Now, we're not there the whole time, and I get that.
But they could also put an or next to the name.
They did not do that.
Which they do with depth chart.
I mean, they put an or with Xavier Watts, for gosh sakes. Okay, exactly. That was surprising to me. But they didn't put an or there. And so, will Billy overtake Coogan at some point in the season? That's possible. But I don't think this is a calculated thing where they're like, okay, well, we need the guy that knows his assignments for the Navy game, and then we'll just plug in Billy Schrauth for the Tennessee State game. I don't see that being the case. I think they feel like Pat Coogan won the job. And if that's the case, great for Pat Coogan. That means he had one hell of a fall. That's awesome. Let's see what this offensive line looks like. Could Billy Schrauth take over for him maybe halfway through the season or something? It's possible. It's absolutely possible. Let's see how Pat does when, the lights are the brightest. You know what I mean? And so, I'm still a Billy Schrauth fan. I think Billy Schrauth's gonna be really good in this offensive line at some point, but they got hella depth if Pat Coogan is the guy starting.
Vince, there are a lot of Billy Schrauth fans, and especially when Billy Schrauth kind of had the Harry Hiestand seal of approval, like that, that. I think that sways a lot of people. But it is not going to be Billy Schrauth right now, and I completely agree with what you were saying. It would be one thing if we ever saw Billy Schrauth getting first-team reps, like they were, alternating first-team reps between Schrauth and Coogan over the last couple of weeks, but they weren't. All the first-team reps were going to the same guys across the board. So I just, like you said, maybe it's up to Coogan, one, to prove that he deserves to be out there. He still has to earn that every week, just like everybody else. You can't just go out there. You don't go into the season as the starter and you just keep that by default if someone is performing better than you in practices and show that they deserve more of an opportunity. So Coogan still has to keep it, but I think it's his job to lose at this point, just based on everything that we've seen. And we just got to come to grips with that.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, look, now that I've seen the depth chart, I guess I'm officially on board that, and I will fall to the coaches that they know what they're doing. We'll see what happens. But I'm all here. I'm here. I'm ready. I'm on board. So Pat Coogan, let's go.
Well, and this is really for Joe Rudolph. This is kind of an early, I don't want to say crossroads, but this is a big moment for Joe Rudolph coming in as a new offensive line coach, new position coach, leading this group. It's a position group that for at least the last decade or so, maybe even longer, has kind of offensive line and tight end have kind of been the bell cows for Notre Dame for several years now. They kind of hang their hat on those two positions. And so for Joe Rudolph to come in and for Pat Coogan to end up starting at left guard, a guy with no experience. Now, it's not that Schrauth had a ton of experience either.
True.
But again, it's
Schrauth's recruiting profile that is what everybody's talking about, right?
That will move a lot of people, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Look,
Pat Coogan has to kind of prove it for not just for himself, but sort of for Joe Rudolph, I guess I'm saying as well.
100%. I mean, look, going into spring, and if we were projecting the starting offensive line, we would have had Billy Schrauth at left guard, and we would have had Andrew Kristofic at right guard. Neither one of those guys are going to start on Saturday, So, I mean, kudos to those two. Kudos to Rudolph for not just going with the status quo, I mean, I give him a lot of credit. He took this line. He's going to make it his own. And we'll see if that works out for him, because you're right. Joe Rudolph has put his stamp on this offensive line. And if it doesn't work, buck stops with him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's
but
right.
Then the next thing will be, if it doesn't work, and I'm not saying that it's not going to, but if it doesn't work, are you prepared to pull the plug and go to the next guy?
Right.
Or are you going to just stick with it? You know what I mean? There's a lot going on here.
Yep. Well, there's something going on between the two guards as well. Marcus Freeman updated the status of Zeke Correll.
Progressing really well. He'll practice today, and we expect him to be able to go. He's progressing really well. I want to see him go out there and practice today. We kind of held him out last week, but today we're going to push him to go, and he's been doing a great job in rehab and recovery. So I think today will tell us a lot.
So you already have two first-time starters going at guard in Coogan and Spindler, and then you've got the veteran Correll, who started all last year, a handful of games before that as well. Tweaked the ankle. What was it? Last Tuesday when we were there, he was in T-shirt and shorts wearing a brace on his ankle. Wednesday, he was out there doing warm-ups and some other stuff, but Ashton Craig was still getting the first-team reps. They had the lineman run at one point, and Zeke Correll's running was not there. He was limping very badly, and some of the training staff had to kind of help him down the field at one point, but they were going to, kind of test it. They rested him more last week, tested it today, or they're testing it today. What's your concern if it is Ashton Craig and not Zeke Correll at center Saturday? This
is the bigger story to me than the guard battle at this point. I mean, I think that not having Zeke Correll is a much bigger deal than who's playing left guard. Okay. So Zeke Correll being in the game is massive. If he can't play, now I'm officially worried about the offensive line. I'm not worried about the offensive line with Pat Coogan starting at left guard, because he's got Joe Alt to his left and he's got Zeke Correll to his right. Like, I'm not worried about that in any way. Zeke Correll's out. Now you've got three brand new guys all along the interior, and you've got Navy coming at you from all different directions.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm officially worried if that's the case. So him being healthy is a way bigger story to me than who's playing left guard. So if he's good to go, I'm good to go. If he's not good to go, I'm not pushing the panic button like they're going to lose, but I'm pushing the panic button like this isn't going to be super smooth.
No. And again, especially when you're talking about, you go from two guys with inexperience, but they're sandwiched in between three veterans who have been through it all, between both of the tackles and the center, to potentially your entire interior offensive line has no experience. If there's no Zeke Correll, and the guy making the calls against that Navy front that gave Notre Dame so much fits last year, protecting the big investment that you have at quarterback, and the whole thing. I completely agree with what you're saying, Vince. That would be what would be keeping me up at night if Zeke Correll can't go. Now, again, Joe Rudolph, Marcus Freeman, Jared Parker, those guys, they'll know today just how confident they are that Zeke Correll is going to be ready to go. But remember, now again, Ohio State and Navy are two different things, but at the same time, no Jarrett Patterson. Now, granted, he was at left guard, but still, they're at that point,
he's
they're
still
most
the leader of the
experienced
line.
offensive lineman.
He was
no
the
Jarrett
leader.
Patterson in the opener last year. That made a pretty big difference.
Huge difference. And a partial go Jarrett Patterson made a huge difference against Marshall. I mean, let's be honest. They didn't run the ball very well against Marshall. Pass protection wasn't really great against Marshall. The offensive line struggled against Marshall, So I'm hoping that Zeke Correll is 100% come Saturday. That's going to be very important, obviously, as well. So they're going to have to play this one very intelligently. But if he's on the field, I feel a lot better about things.
Got a little bit different schedule this week because they are flying to Ireland in the middle of the week. They're flying to Ireland on Wednesday. So I want you to listen to this now.
Okay.
Here's what the schedule. I'm gonna take notes on this, as a matter of fact, as we do this. I think I had this written down, but I want to make sure that I've got it. Here's what the schedule is going to look like this week for the Irish with their practices?
Schedule kind of for this week is we'll go today. Usually Mondays we are more of a walkthrough practice, but being the first week, we will go. Today is like a Tuesday practice. Tomorrow will really be a Thursday practice in our minds in terms of how long we'll be out there, and then Wednesday will be a normal Wednesday practice. And the thought is to truly get after them Wednesday. I want them pretty tired as we get on this flight Wednesday night to fly over to Dublin. We'll land in Dublin Thursday morning, kind of go to the hotel, get unpacked, and keep our guys up. We're going to keep them up, really do some walkthroughs and stuff at the hotel. Then we'll go and we'll practice Thursday, and then Friday will be a little bit more intense than Thursday. Thursday they'll be pretty jet lagged, and so we have to be smart in terms of our structure once we get there. But I feel really good about the plan. We talked to a lot of different organizations that have kind of done similar trips, and we felt like this was the best one.
They've put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah.
Vince, what do you think?
I liked at the end when he said we talked to a bunch of different organizations that have done trips like this. That was good. I mean, you don't really want to wing this type of thing. And the other thing is, like, different people adjust to the time change differently. You know what I mean? It's not just it's not a simple, he's going to be the same as this guy and this guy's going to be the same as this guy. It affects guys differently. You know what I mean? The part that I think I find the most interesting is they're going to practice on Wednesday, get on a plane, head over there, get their stuff together, and then go practice again. Like, you're expecting these guys to basically sleep on the plane, which, okay, I get that's a long flight. They're probably going to take a nice plane for big guys to be able to get some rest, that kind of a thing.
They're going to keep them up.
But then they're going to keep them up. Like, that's the other thing. We're going to keep them up and try to get them acclimated.
But so that's what I've heard from other people too.
Yeah.
Is when you make that trip to Europe because of the time jump, that you essentially want to find something to do, kind of keep going throughout the day to get you into
and then crash, I guess,
a somewhat, normal sleep pattern. Yeah. So that you can crash, because like he said, he wants to kind of get after it on Wednesday, get physical, get them on the plane, and then hopefully they sleep for about, fill their bellies with food, I imagine, when they get on the plane, and then hopefully have them sleep and then get up and not necessarily get after it, but they're going to practice again anyway on Thursday.
But it'll give them something to do to make sure that they're up and they're not just hanging around the hotel. Like, if I'm hanging around the hotel, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to fall asleep. I mean, that's the one time I went over to Italy. It's exactly what happened. Is I got over there, and then we went to the hotel, and I immediately fell asleep. And I lost like half a day because I fell asleep because of the time change and everything. So you need to take notes now for when you go over with women's basketball, because you're going to, you don't want to miss anything. You got to stay up.
That's right. I thought it was interesting that because they've rearranged, like today, not a walkthrough like they usually do. It's going to be a regular practice. It's more like a Tuesday practice, he said. And then tomorrow is going to be more like a Thursday, is what he said. So they're kind of, again, they're moving Thursday to Tuesday. And essentially, it sounds like Tuesday to Thursday, basically flip-flopping Tuesday and Thursday, what they would typically do. A little bit lighter, and then get after it a little bit, again, the day before the game, get their juices going, I guess, and then get going on Saturday. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out.
It is. And I mean, you have a huge talent disparity against Navy. You always do. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. So, it's going to be how you prepare. Look, these naval guys, they're going over. I mean, not these guys, but like other Navy guys, they're going overseas. They're doing, this is more in their wheelhouse than it is Notre Dame's. I realize these guys are at the Naval Academy and they're not necessarily flying all over the place, but my guess is Navy will have a good plan as to how to keep their guys at top, mental and physical awareness by going overseas. They, the naval structure, they do that kind of thing all the time, and they've got to be on their toes, when they get to where they're going and things like that. So, that's what you're competing against, the off the field stuff. Those guys are professionals at this. How's Notre Dame going to do? Yeah.
They're not technically in the Navy yet, but they're doing a lot of Navy training. They still have to do Navy training in the summer, and
Yes.
Obviously, they're wearing their uniforms and doing other Navy stuff throughout the day. So,
and they're used to being fatigued, and they're used to doing, things that are going to push you physically, and all of those different things. And it's a mental game and all of that. That's what those guys thrive at. You know what I mean? And so Notre Dame's climbing an uphill battle if that's what you're comparing. In my opinion, it's different when they get on the field, but preparation is all part of it.
Speaking of which, this game has typically been in the middle of the season. The last time they opened a season against each other was 2012 when Notre Dame won handily over in Ireland. Is there a benefit, Marcus Freeman, from playing this game at the start of the season?
100%. We've been able to prepare from spring ball to parts of the summer to parts of fall camp, and then obviously 2 weeks to prepare for Navy. It's just strictly Navy, and it's a tremendous advantage to play Navy the first game of the year, because the preparation that entails getting ready for them is obviously lengthened.
So how big do you think the advantage is, Vince, doing this at the start of the season rather than middle of the season?
It's massive. It's massive. From just a preparation standpoint, being able, like you said, to work against the naval offense or the Navy offense in the spring, in the fall. You're not condensed down to 1 week. I just think that, because remember we talked in the past, like when Navy would be in. Remember when Brian Kelly lost to Navy, and then the next year they're like, we're going to sprinkle Navy in, in the spring and in the fall, and we're going to do it all the time. And you should do that anyway. Right. But then if it's game one and you've been doing that, awesome, because then you can just flush it when you're done, because you're never going to see another offense like that the rest of the year. The rest of the offenses you're going to see are at least going to be similar to each other. Somewhat similar. Right. And so week one, man, you can put all the preparation that you need to into it, and then you're done for the whole season. That is huge. Absolutely huge.
Completely agree. You're not going to see a triple option look the entire rest of the season. Get in, get out, get on with your life.
Right.
Just keep on moving. And if the last time they played is any indication, it was a lopsided game in Notre Dame's favor. That doesn't automatically mean it's going to be lopsided. It's
right.
There is some newness. There is, I think, the big question. Two big questions from a Navy standpoint that we'll get into more later in the week is, one, you do have a new offensive coordinator who is going to at least throw some passing looks at you. They're even going to line up in shotgun, apparently, from time to time, which you don't obviously see typically from a triple option offense. But
nope.
There's going to be some of that. And just the fact that they've got a new head coach as well. How does that factor in to the whole thing?
A lot of question marks about Navy. I need to watch some Kennesaw State film at some point this week just to kind of see what their offense looks like, because that's where the offensive coordinator came from. And here's the thing. Are there going to be some things that Notre Dame has never seen before that's going to get thrown at them in this game? Yep, no doubt about it. But the other thing is they haven't recruited to this offense yet. And so there's going to be a lot of round pegs and square holes and some things like that. And they're not going to be
playing tight end, things like that.
There's going to be a lot of things that they're just not going to be able to do well yet. Now, once they start to recruit to that, then that offense is going to take maybe a different shape to it. But then at Notre Dame, you're going to have 1 to 2 years under your belt of at least the X's and O's of that offense, and be able to spar against it. So Navy has some things that they're going to throw at Notre Dame they're not going to be able to expect, but I don't know that they're going to be real great at it in week one. And that's the other thing about the triple option in general. They're never really great in week one, right? I've seen a lot of stats out there of what Navy's done in week one over the last few years. It's not great offensively. It takes some time to get really good at the triple option, the timing, the speed, all of that stuff.
And the fact that they are looking at playing two quarterbacks, I don't think can help that.
When you have two, you got none, right?
Yep. And again, we'll have the Navy interview tomorrow. Bill Wagner from the Annapolis Gazette and the Baltimore Sun will join me tomorrow. That'll lead off tomorrow's show. So you'll hear from Bill, and then Jess and I will have rapid fire afterwards. So we'll get more into that. And we'll talk more Navy, of course, throughout this week. Anthony, appreciate the super chat as always. Andrew says, I'm going to be honest, if Zeke Correll isn't 100%, I'm not playing him against Navy. Too important to the season to be pushing it for a non-big time opponent. Do you agree with that?
It's a judgment call. I mean, is he 90%? Is he 95%? You know what I mean? Like, is it a big time opponent? No, it's not. But I think while it's not a big time opponent, the communication up front might be more important than any other opponent that you're going to face, because no other opponent.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm probably going to say what you were going to say. No other opponent is going to bring different, looks and things, and you're going to have to be able to communicate more in this game than any other game this season, because it's just going to be different. And you need your center there. You need him. If he's 90%, if he's 80%, he's playing.
Much more important in this game than Tennessee State.
100%.
Next week.
Yes. If Ashton Craig was going to play next week, and I would be cool with that. Hey, we're going to give Zeke Correll a week off before we go on the road to NC State. Okay, cool. Do it. I would have no problem with that. A little bit more scary against Navy.
Concur. Some other people, agreeing with the rather play Navy at the beginning of the schedule. And I agree, but it was just a few years ago. I don't know if it was the season opener, but it was one of the first couple of weeks. Remember, they played at Ohio State, and they were giving Ohio State a scare before the Buckeyes finally pulled it out and all that. I mean, it's other people. There's a reason other big-time programs don't typically play Navy.
Well, exactly.
Because they don't want any part of it.
Because it's not because they're going to get injured or anything like that. It's because it's a pain in the butt to prepare for. It's a pain.
Different, complete one-off.
And that's why they're playing Tennessee States of the world as opposed to Navy. That's what these schools do. And I'm sure that Navy was having a hard time scheduling a full slate of full slate of games when they were an independent. That's why they joined a conference, because it's obviously a lot easier to schedule. So yeah, I love the fact that Notre Dame plays Navy. I do. I always will. It's a team I want on the schedule every year, but it's a pain in the neck to schedule, or it's a pain in the neck to prepare for. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
Tanner asks what the recruiting looks like at Navy. He says he always assumed they just took kids who already wanted to join the Navy. Well, I mean, I think that there's some of that. I know that a few years back, really around the time they started beating Notre Dame, their recruiting got better in terms of the kind of athletes they were able to pull in. Again, talking to, Bill Wagner is the guy who has covered Navy, I think, for 30 years or something like that. So there have been a couple times, it's been a few years, but we talked specifically about the recruiting. It's not as good now as it was then, I don't think. But at the same time, like you had an Alohi Gilman go through Navy. I think there are some guys like Alohi who are maybe in that 2 to 3 star range, just not getting the looks from the kind of programs that they would prefer to be getting looks at. And maybe Navy seems like a good fit for them. Like in Alohi's case, obviously, as he got in there and he showed that he could do it, it became pretty obvious pretty quickly to him, and I think to even others around him, that the NFL was something that he could aspire to, and he needed to leave. And that's what he was, had more aspirations than a career in the military. And give him credit for being able to make that decision when he did. But they're obviously not going out and getting 4 and 5 star type guys at the Naval Academy or any of the service academies.
Well, that's why they run the triple option, because it's kind of a great equalizer, and it allows guys who are disciplined and athletic to play against guys that are bigger, stronger, and more athletic than you. I mean, that's why they do it. I mean, it's not because the Navy loves the triple option. It's because it's an equalizer, and it allows you to play against, like I said, bigger, stronger, faster. And so they do recruit guys who are not just interested in the Navy. That I can assure you. Like, for example, Justin Fisher, who walked on to Notre Dame, he either had an offer from Army or Navy, and I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the service academies. he had a full ride offer to go there. And of course, when you go to the academy, it is a full ride because nobody pays tuition to go to the academies.
Yeah.
But, he had a full ride to go there. He chose to walk on at Notre Dame. So I don't think he had aspirations of being in the military. Maybe that's why he chose to go to Notre Dame. I don't know. But they recruit, man. They recruit triple option guys. They recruit athletes. It helps that they want to be in the armed forces, obviously, but that's not a prerequisite. They're gonna cast a wide net and they're gonna go after guys. Now, remember though, there's also, similar to Notre Dame guys, there's an academic profile that these guys have to hit as well, right. And it's pretty major. I mean, you still have to have the recommendation of a congressman to get into Navy and Army and all of that, and so it's a different kind of a process, but they cast a wide net, man. And if you're doing your thing with your studies and you're doing what you need to do and you're a good athlete, you're going to get some opportunities from the service academies.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because the guy we were just talking about Navy's quarterbacks, the guy who was the front runner, who was at the head of the pack, Gleason is his last name, to be the Navy starting quarterback, did not make the grades in the spring, and as a result, he had to go to summer school. And because of the time where Navy practices and does all that, he was not able to go to practice because he had to go to summer school to get his grades back up. So instead of potentially starting against Notre Dame this Saturday, he is at the bottom of the quarterback depth chart. I'm not even sure if he's completely on the roster right now because he had to go to summer school and wasn't able to do any of the practices and stuff like that the rest of the football team was able to do.
That's a good question.
I did get from Bill Wagner today.
I'm pulling up their depth chart right now that we just got this afternoon, and he is not on the depth chart at quarterbacks. Horvath, Lavate, and Arline are the guys that are on there. So
there you go.
That pretty much tells you. And
Arline is the guy who played against Notre Dame last year when Lavate was hurt. And then again, Horvath has not played yet, and he is in line to play. They are listed as an or situation. Lavate and Horvath at quarterback.
It's Gleaton, Gleaton. He is on the roster. He is number 10 on the roster. So, but he's not on the depth chart. So, obviously, he had an uphill climb to get on the playing field, and it's not going to happen in week 1. So,
that is true.
Yep.
That is true. Vince, rapid fire. Are you ready for it?
Is it time already?
Let's do it. It's here.
That's what I get for not following along with the outline. I'm ready.
More Marcus Freeman comments to get us started in rapid fire. Starting off, he went through at the start of his press conference today the top 3 things that he wanted to get out of fall camp.
There was 3 things as a head coach I really wanted to get out of fall camp. One is I wanted to build the depth of our team. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, there's a lot of guys that we're going to count on that do not have game experience. And so I'm pleased that at the depth at certain positions that we were able to really get valuable reps in camp. We really forced the coaches to play some of those, what we would call 2s in 1 situations, and let's see those guys develop and see what they can do when they're playing against some of the best. The second thing was I wanted to really get us physically ready to play a game, but also keep us healthy. I mean, it's something that I looked at the injuries from last year in fall camp, and I said, we got to find a better way to do this. And so I think we were down over half of the concussions. And I know we decreased in every soft tissue ligament injury in all facets in any body part. So we really decreased the injuries. And I know the weather helped, but I think we were 79% down in dehydration for fall camp. So that was really, our team did a great job. Just the sports performance team, the medical trainers, our coaches really did a great job at keeping the guys healthy and making sure we have everybody we need as we get ready to go to Dublin, Ireland. And the last thing we really want to do is really increase our leadership. I believe that's what will be our edge is our leadership. When we have a lot of leaders, right? We have a lot of guys that are in leadership positions, but I think the team did a great job. Our coaching staff did a great job of really promoting leadership, helping to build leadership, putting them in positions to, all of our seniors spoke to the team at some point about some of the lessons they've learned over their time here, and really try to just create an environment of leadership to really promote that amongst our program.
Vince, I guess you become what you emphasize, because he said those were the three things that they were focused on. And like when you sit there and think about it, depth, health, keeping the injuries down, and leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, three big check marks, I think, on all counts.
I think the depth is better. I mean, we've been talking about this all, for the last 6 months, right? The depth is better than it's been ever across the board, that we've been covering the team, and that's, almost 20 years. It's the best depth that I've ever seen at all the positions. Now, of course, they've been deeper at various, things like that, but across the board, this is the deepest team that I can remember, right? So check mark, no doubt. How often, it's funny, I was listening to some of the guys in the media talking when we were at the first day of practice, and there was nobody in the corner on the bicycles and, doing the whole, the rehab, and they're like, oh, give it a day. Give it a day or two. Yep. It's going to be full. It never was full. I think at most the practices that I was at, it was like 2 or 3 guys, and in the past there's been like 8 or 9 or 10 guys over there. So huge check mark there. Yeah, you had a couple guys go down with the ACLs. Some of those things are just absolutely unavoidable, obviously, but that was huge. And then the leadership piece, he talked about in his opening statement about how there were 10 guys that got double-digit votes for captain.
Right.
Like, check mark again. I mean, I think this is a lot of it is coach speak. A lot of it is preseason team speak. I get that. It's the closest team they've ever seen. There's a lot of leadership, but I think there is a lot of leadership on this team. I mean, you could have gone 5, 6, 7 deep of guys that if they would have named them captain, you'd have been like, oh yeah, okay, I see that, and they went to 4, and I think they made great choices with the 4 guys that they did. But, I think he checked all, if those were the 3 things that he wanted, I think he nailed all 3 of them. No doubt about that.
I agree. And like the health thing, just like you said, you never saw an abundance of guys over there, and hadn't really thought about it just until he started talking about it. Just the fact that wanting to avoid things like soft tissue injuries, in other words, hamstring pulls and calf pulls, whatever it happens to be, and concussions obviously being a big one. You didn't hear, there might have been 1 or 2 guys throughout the entire camp, but you didn't hear like, okay, this guy's in concussion protocol. He's still not back from concussion protocol, that kind of stuff. They did an outstanding job of that. And Stymie said, depth, health, and leadership. I would have been happy with wrap up and tackle, finish your blocks, never look to the sidelines when on offense. I think at least number 3, never look to the sidelines, should, I guess we'll find out on Saturday, but it should be taken care of with the fact that you've got a different offensive coordinator calling the shots. We definitely did not see any of that when we were out there during training camp.
No, we didn't. But we didn't see any last year either. So at least not that I remember. Maybe we did. Maybe I've just blocked it out.
Michael says, this is the same coaching staff that has improved the depth, yet we second guess them at every turn.
Well, but you know what, Michael? I agree with you on this one, but because of the depth, we second guess them, because the guys there that are in second place or are number 2 on the depth chart, we think can be a starter. So I think that's actually a nod to the coaching staff that they're doing a good job with these guys, because we like what the depth looks like, and we would be happy if the 2 was the 1 or the 1 was the 2 or whatever. So I think that's actually a compliment, Michael.
Yeah. Brent asked the status of Eli Raridan. He is still kind of working his way back into form, I guess, which I think is good.
Yeah, slow.
I don't know that we necessarily see him this week or next week, but I think that they need to. He has been out there practicing, but he is not in the top 3 on the depth chart going into this week. Sherwood is the number 3 tight end.
Right.
And in fact, I'll tell you, Mitchell Evans, number 1, Holden stays at number 2, and then Davis Sherwood. So not expecting to see Eli Raridan this week, but I think that, again, I think that's a good thing when he's still less than a year removed from tearing his ACL for a second time.
Correct. You need to, I believe there was an interview with Eli when they had the tight ends out there, and he actually said, yeah, I think I came back a little soon, the last time. Okay. Relax.
But he also said he was trying to be ready by the time this game came around, which, again, of course, I thought was a little bit aggressive.
Yeah, that's very aggressive. I think they're doing it right. They're going to slow play him a little bit. Look, if he comes back even in the middle of the season, I'd be totally fine with that one. Totally fine.
Right. All right. So they are going to Ireland, like we were talking about. We were talking about the schedule that they're going to have. What about jet lag?
Hopefully, so we're staying. I don't know if the 2012 team stayed the night. They didn't stay the night, so they came back right after the game, whereas we're going to stay the night, get up early in the morning, and fly back. So I've always been told coming west, like, you should be better because you're gaining hours. So I'm less concerned with the trip back, but still, everything's been planned out to the minute. What time we're leaving, when we're getting back, what are we doing when we get back? All those things have been planned out to the minute. And then you got to think about the next week of practice, right? Understand there still is going to be some fatigue when you travel from a different country back to here in Indiana. And so that has been taken into consideration in terms of the practice schedules for the following week. How do we make sure that we're able to get out what we need, but take into consideration it's going to be a full week of school. We played in a different country the previous Saturday, and we have to be ready to perform. Again, it all goes back. Let's look at the end result. We have to be ready to perform Saturday at 2:30. It's 2:30 or 3:30, whatever time we play here. Okay, now how do we make sure we have a plan that our guys feel physically ready to perform that next Saturday?
So, Vince, are you more worried about jet lag coming or going? Either, neither, both. What do you think?
This is going to sound incredibly disrespectful to Tennessee State, and I don't mean it that way. It just is what it is. If they were playing even Central Michigan or they were playing a MAC team,
okay,
I would feel I would have more worry about them coming back than I do of them going. Because normally after Dublin, they would have a bye week. That's normally how they do it. And that's originally, I believe, how this schedule was set up before they brought the Tennessee State game in, right? So I'm not saying that Tennessee State is a bye, but I am saying you should be able to handle your business even if you are not at your physical peak and ready to roll that week.
And I think that's essentially how they decided.
I agree.
Because remember, there are two byes later on. In October and November.
Yes.
We're going to have two byes, 2-3 weeks apart, I guess, in October and November. So there's already two byes because they're playing in week 0. So rather than take the bye in week 1 after playing in week 0, they're taking the bye later in the season. And just the way you explained it there, the fact that it's Tennessee State, it's like, well, should make up for it. And that's actually kind of how the question was posed. I guess I should have said, was when the 2012 team went over to Ireland last and played Navy over there, they came back. They were very sluggish the next week against Purdue. Remember, it was a squeaker that Tommy Rees had to come off the bench and help lead the comeback against Purdue. So was he more concerned coming or going? Like going, I think it's important to remember that Navy has to travel over there as well. So really, going over there, I don't think it's nearly a big an issue. I do think that it is a little bit more of a concern coming back. But like you said, you should be able to sluggishly, against Tennessee.
Exactly.
It's like I hesitate to say it because you said it earlier in the show. We said it against Stanford last year, and how did that turn out?
Yeah, well, and Travis says everyone thought Marshall was a bye too, though. Okay, I get what you're saying. Marshall still plays at the Division I level.
Right.
Tennessee State does not.
Tennessee State does not. Right.
Okay, and as much as I am not overly happy about the fact they're playing a 1AA school, I understand why they're doing it. It's Marshall would wipe the floor with Tennessee State. That's the reality of the situation. And so I'm not looking past Tennessee State, but they wouldn't have put Tennessee State the week after going to Dublin if they didn't have some confidence in what they were doing. How about that?
Yeah. Chi-Town says, yeah, but Navy is used to being sleep
Yeah,
deprived. But I mean,
I
so
get
are
that.
so are I think you could make the case that, especially coming out of during training camp, like most Division I football players are probably sleep deprived to some extent.
That's a good point.
Especially when they're practicing in the morning.
Right.
Like getting up in the morning is not the thing that teenagers want to do.
Right.
Yeah, and Chi-Town says Tennessee State not even a good team in the subdivision. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the Tennessee State aspect of this next week, but I'm not overly concerned. There is a chance that they come out and don't look great against Tennessee State, but still win by 3 or 4 touchdowns
or more. I mean, just because that's just what it is. I mean, that's
yeah.
They could I'm sorry, but they could back into a 40-point win, and not look good doing it. That is an absolute possibility. They could absolutely do that. And it's still a big win over a 1AA school, and that's what you're supposed to do. But they could still look very sluggish doing that, and that's why you put Tennessee State where you did. And like John says, Notre Dame should have scheduled a better team than Tennessee State. Yeah, they should have, but it should have been like week 9, not in week 2. If it was a better team, it should have been one of those later buys, and this should have been a buy. I would have been really nervous if this was a Big Ten team or something along those lines. That would have.
If you had the choice, would you have just taken the bye in week 2 rather than playing Tennessee State and then just had one bye during the season?
100%.
After you get into that.
Yes, absolutely.
I realize you start, you stop, and then you start back up again and all that.
Okay.
But yeah,
I would have 100% done that. That's the way I would have scheduled this. Like if we're going to play in week 0 and we're going to be overseas, we're getting a bye the next week. Like that's how this is going to go. That's one of the kind of the subplots of this entire schedule that Notre Dame has this year. What do they play 8 games in a row, and then they have 2 byes in a 4-week span or something, or 4-game span? It's something along those lines. How's that going to shake up? What's that going to look like? What are the injuries going to look like? Are these guys going to be banged up by the time they get, there's a lot of question marks about the schedule for me, and they jostled it around so that they could get Tennessee on the schedule, and not sure how I feel about it right now. We'll see how it all plays out.
I agree. Fill in the blank, Vince. Notre Dame's biggest training camp surprises were blank.
This one was really tough for me. I sat around and I was thinking about this one for a while because, the biggest surprise was the guard situation, both of them, guard situations. I said earlier that we all anticipated it was going to be Billy Schrauth and Andrew Kristofic, and it's Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler. So I think the rest of the depth chart is very similar to what we thought it would be. I think, listening to Coach Rudolph I think I've been very happy with what he's bringing to the table. A lot of the things kind of went how I kind of anticipated that they would go. So I would say the guard position and how it all shook out is my biggest surprise.
And I still think the left guard even more than the right. You can say that they're both surprising. DJ Brown holding on at least for now. Again, how much of that is now defensively you can see where you are going to start some different guys that is Navy specific. Does DJ Brown hold on to that though? How quickly does Antonio Carter potentially become the safety? He did talk a little bit about there being some learning curve moving from cornerback to safety, but at least for right now, DJ Brown is at the top of the depth chart there. And I don't want to say major surprise, but still a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just how impressive the defensive line looked. I think we've got to put that up there as well. I'm not completely shocked because Jason Onyé had a nice spring, but across the board, Riley Mills looks like a difference-making defensive tackle. He's been a good defensive lineman the last couple of years. He looks like a total difference-making type guy. And you can throw Jason Onyé in there and Howard Cross. There's just depth across the board. It was the development of that position after watching them last year. I think we would all agree was a major concern going into this offseason, and where they are right now, how they look going into this season compared to a year ago, night and day difference. So again, I'm not like shocked that the line is at least competent, but to me, they're far above competent. They're difference making, looking
that's a good
good.
one.
And that is a surprise to me.
That is a good one because that was a massive, question mark going into the fall, and I think we got a lot of those questions answered by watching this D line do what they do, because this is still going to be a really good offensive line, and the D line, they more than held their own all summer or all fall long. You know what I mean? And I think people are going to be really happy with the way the defensive line, because it doesn't have like the star power maybe that other defensive lines have had, but the depth and them just getting after it, I think is going to be awesome to watch.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And it's going to help the linebackers.
Oh, 100%.
Help the linebackers.
Yes.
A ton. It's time he said, most surprising, losing strength and conditioning coach on the eve of training camp. That's for sure. I mean,
you're not wrong.
That was a huge shock.
You're not wrong, but he's at all of his son's football games. I can vouch for that one. It's pretty funny. Because his son will point up in the stands and he's, dad's going crazy. And it's kind of fun to watch him be dad, and not have to worry about other stuff. And he's definitely enjoying it. So it's good.
What'd you think of Sam Hartman's little Under Armour gift announcement to the team, the shoes that he's giving to his teammates?
I love the gesture. Right? Because it sounded like they were coming to Sam to, work on his NIL deal and all that. And he's like, I want to give it to the guys, whatever. But at the same time, the skeptic in me is like, don't they get free Under Armour shoes all the time?
That's the first thing I thought. It's like they get everything they need. Like, did they need Sam Hartman to give them more Under Armour?
Was this like an extra, an extra thing that they weren't going to get? Like, I don't know. So I don't know if they were just trying to shape it to be like Sam's giving them this, but like, I don't know. It felt a little hollow. Like if he was going to give them stuff, maybe not the team that, the company that's already sponsoring them. I don't know.
It's like the company that's paying more than $10 million a year, apparently to supply all this stuff. I thought that's what their job was. So that's the only thing that kind of surprised me. Yeah. It's like, Sam Hartman's giving his teammates more shoes. Oh, okay. By the way, I saw when I was walking to the press conference today, I saw some people carting a big cart of shoes. I don't know if they were those shoes or not, but there were stacks of shoe boxes on this cart that they were.
Just want to say, hey, you got any 12s over there? It's like the fish. You got any 6s? You got any 12s?
That's right.
Crystal
says, are they playing in a dome? Could weather be a factor? They are not playing in a dome, and I suppose weather could be a factor. I have not looked at the forecast.
I've heard rain, but I've heard that the chance of the rain has diminished as they've gotten closer. It's one of those kinds of things.
I mean, it is Ireland, so.
Right, exactly. So you kind of
have to. Emerald Isle for a reason. They get plenty of moisture.
Yeah, kind of have to figure that's going to happen. So, yeah.
Greg says, do we think they'll go beyond the 2 deep at any point other than mop-up duty these next 2 to 4 weeks?
Beyond the 2 deep? No. I don't think they're going to go beyond the 2 deep. I think the 2 deep is who's actually going to play. And if they go beyond the 2 deep, it'll be mop-up duty.
Because of mop-up duty.
Yeah. Right.
They're not just going to throw a 3rd or 4th string. The only again, like defensive line, maybe just because I think that they can go 10 or 11 deep, but 10 or 11 guy number 10 or 11 might also depend on situation. So I don't think they're just going to tinker and throw guys out there when the game is potentially on the line still, just to get them out there on the field. That's what mop-up duty is for.
And there's a reason that some of the positions had 2 guys, some of the positions had 3. Those are the guys that are going to play, that are going to see time. Now, outside of like the second offensive line, that's obviously not going to be the case. But, other positions, there's a reason there were certain guys where they were, you know what I mean? And so
And
I don't see
Crystal,
them going beyond
Crystal
that.
makes a good point. Running back, you'll see at least 3. I mean, that's fair just because, but again, as Dylan McCullough has detailed, he's got this list of 9 to 10 jobs. So you're going to see, I would say we're going to see at least 4 running backs out there this Saturday.
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah. But
apparently Hartman got the team beats as well. So
that's
what should have been publicized. Because
I didn't hear anything about the beats. I thought it was all about these, whatever the shoe was called.
Apparently got everybody gold beats. Okay, cool. I hope that's the case, because that's what should have been publicized, because they're not a direct sponsor of Notre Dame football. Like that would have made this question a little bit different for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You don't see Beats by Dre on the front of the jersey, the little Beats, the little B logo.
No. These are Beats by Hartman.
Apparently. Yeah. Fill in the blank. Hartman's touchdown over-under for the season is 26.5. His passing yards over-under is 2,800.5 yards. It would be blank if he goes under on either of those props.
A disastrous season. It would be bad. I mean, either that means he was injured or they are very ineffective offensively. And I'm not going to say we, because I'm not going to throw anybody else under the bus. I was very wrong about what this offense was going to look like. So those are the two options. It's either Hartman gets hurt.
That's what it would mean. It would mean that you were wrong. Okay.
It means I'm wrong and Hartman got hurt. Either way, that's a disaster.
Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner combined for over 2,600 yards last year. Now, granted, this is regular season and that includes the bowl game, but still, they combined for 2,600. Drew Pine threw 22 touchdown passes and over 2,000 yards by himself. And so you're telling me that Sam Hartman isn't going to come in and just light up both of those numbers this year? It's just I still don't get like where, and this is a Vegas number. I don't get why they have the line on this set so low. It's
looking for
very,
action.
Very odd to me.
I don't know how they're not going to get it on one side.
But it hasn't moved at all. Like it's
crazy.
Been out there for a while and it has not moved at all. They have stayed. Maybe the passing yards might have come up a little bit, but the touchdown passes at 26.5 is nuts. I don't see any way he's under 3,000 yards. I don't see any way he's under 30 touchdown passes.
And I think even 30's low. I think it's going to be mid 30s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's like Lamrek said, I'd expect an average of 3 touchdowns a game, which equals 36 touchdowns. That seems doable. I agree, because there's going to be times where he's going to have more than that. And there's going to be, an average of 3. I think that's a very reasonable expectation, a very reasonable expectation.
Mm-hmm. Xavier Watts, Jack Kaiser, Maris Leofau shared the team lead against Navy in the game last season with a team lead 8 tackles against the midshipmen. Scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that one of those 3 will lead the Irish again in the matchup this week?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. So I'm going to give it a 2. Because I think J.D. Bertrand is going to lead the team in tackles on Saturday. I don't think it's going to be close, because he's going to be playing the middle of the field. They're going to hand it off to the fullback a bunch of times. He's going to get a bunch of tackles, and I think that he is going to have the team lead.
I think of these 3, Watts has the best chance.
Sure.
To me. But I would put this at like maybe a 5 because of what you just said. Remember, J.D. Bertrand didn't play last year against Navy, and that's part of why these 3 did share the team lead. So J.D.'s going to be back. He would be the one that I would peg as my leader, and I would put Xavier Watts after him. I'm not sure about the other 2. Like, really curious to see how these 2 are used this year. Now, again, this is a one-off game, but I don't think Maris Leofau is going to see the field the way he did last year, where he was the defensive leader in snaps last year. I think we're going to see more of Kaiser, but I am curious to see how these 2 are going to be deployed and how it's going to be split up this season.
Very interested to see how the linebacker rotation looks. I was curious about it going into fall, but I'm even more curious about it going into game 2 or 3, not necessarily game 1, but what's that linebacker rotation going to look like? Again, you can't take anything what you're going to see on Saturday defensively, good, bad, and different.
Throw it out the window.
Just flush it. Yeah,
That's right.
It's just not the defense that you're going to see. So
the only thing that you can take from it is how do they tackle? Going back to what Stevie said. How do they wrap up? How do they tackle? Do they make tackles, or are they arm tackling and missing tackles? Right. Andre asks, which ranking system do you prefer? Power ranking or poll ranking?
Depends on who's doing it, because a lot of the power rankings are ridiculous, but then some of the poll rankings are ridiculous. So I guess wow. Excuse me, I did a little Greg Brady there. I think poll rankings, I guess I like them a little bit more, because I think everybody's definition of a power ranking is a little bit different.
I agree. The power ranking, it's just like everyone's, when they do these power rankings, they've all got their own formulas and stuff like that. And it's like, do I really buy into this? How much do I really sort of understand, what they value, because like the power index, for example, like a big part of their formula, I believe, is returning production, which Notre Dame doesn't have very much of. So how much does that really mean to Notre Dame? I prefer the polls.
Yep.
Really just prefer the college football playoff ranking, because that's the one that ultimately matters in the end.
Yep.
Right. All right. And Brent asks, if I went to Campagnos when I visited Monterey on my vacation last month. Short story long. Yes, I did. But here's the thing. We were in Monterey on a Tuesday. Turns out Campagnos is closed on Tuesdays. So it's like, what am I going to do? So we were going south, went south to see my sister for a couple days in San Luis Obispo, which is a few hours away. Friday morning, we got up to drive back to San Jose. We flew in and out of San Jose because it was cheaper. We were driving back to San Jose. My wife had called Campagnos the night before and said, look, we're going through the area. We were in town earlier this week. You guys were closed the day we were there, and went through the whole spiel about my husband was there, used to eat your sandwiches all the time when he was in the Army and blah, blah, blah. Could you open up like a half an hour early so we could stop and get a sandwich? So they did. He was wasn't completely happy about it, but he did it.
Wow.
It wasn't him. He sent in, I believe it was another family member who worked there. I gave her a nice tip, for coming in early to do it, but they did it. And the sandwich that I got? The Navy Special.
Wow. Look at you.
The Navy Special. It is the Italian sub is what the Navy Special is called. So fabulous as always. I was glad that I got my Campagnos sandwich for the first time in 35 years.
Been waiting for 35 years. How does it ever live up?
35 years.
That's the question.
I was doubtful that it was going to live up, but it did.
Okay.
Great
That's
sandwich.
All by
Highly
itself.
recommend it. If you're going through Monterey, California, don't stop on Tuesday though, because they're closed on Tuesdays.
It's a random day to be closed.
Got to drive up the hill a little bit. It is worth it. Fabulous place. Highly recommend it. Brent knows. He goes there, I think, quite a bit. So, well, that's going to do it. I don't know about that, Romlek. My wife was doing the moving and the shaking on that. She's the one that convinced him. How did I like the price hike? They weren't cheap, but those sandwiches, man, like a half a sandwich is the equivalent to anybody else's full sandwich.
Oh, gotcha.
Much. So you get a lot. You get a lot with those Campagnos. So I would.
Nice.
I could still live with it. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. We've got plenty of Notre Dame Navy talk as we go throughout this week. It is game week. We've got Bill Wagner. He's going to preview Navy for us on tomorrow's show. We've got more rapid fire, and Vince and I are going to get into some deep dives on some Navy guys on Wednesday's show as well. As deep as we can get anyway.
Yeah,
Colin, you spelled it right. Campanos.
Nice.
Google it. All right, hit the like button on your way out. And, of course, subscribe, rate, and review. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.